Welcome to Khetzturorials, and in this video I'm talking about logical operators. So let's name our file logic or logical. Let's go with logic. Logic, I don't know. Let's just say logical or py. Okay, let's use that. And what are these? So from the name logic, it has to do with reasoning or drawing conclusions based on how things are set up. So in Python, we have three logical operators: and, or, and not. Now, if you're familiar with logic gates and stuff like that, you'd know that these are the operations that those things deal with as well. A lot of these operations actually happen inside your computer to actually compute everything that happens around it. So to make calculations, to display stuff in the screen. A lot of these logical operators that are happening behind the scenes. But now we don't really want to get into that much detail. I just want to explain how these logical operators work in Python. And if you remember in a previous video, we talked about if, and else. Now, when you look at if statements, or when we looked at if statements in that video, we only talked about a specific condition. For example, let's say we define x as 5. And we basically only said that we wanted to check if x less than 5, for example. If x less 5, then we wanted to print yes it is, or something like that, anything that we want to do. Now, if you look at this, this is only one condition. In this case, x is 5. So it's not less than 5, so it will fail this and it will not execute that print statement. Now, what if we wanted to put two restrictions that had to hold before we proceeded with something? Okay, so now if you look at the number 5, the number 5 is greater than 1, so it's greater than all numbers below it, but it's less than 10, or any number that is above it. What if we wanted to specify those two boundaries or those two conditions? And there is no limit on the number of conditions that you can have. So let's start with the and would say x greater than 1, for example, and x less than 10. So when we talk about this and operator, it produces a boolean. So all of this will produce a boolean as long as and is present. Remember, a boolean is just true or false. Okay, so expect this statement to be true, or we expect the result of that to be true. It doesn't have to be inside an if statement. It can be inside a print statement. You can take this exact thing and put it in the print statement, and it will actually print out a boolean. So let's print out this boolean, then we'll discuss this further. So let's start by printing. I was just showing that you can have these logical operators in an if statement. So x greater than 1 and x less than 10. So let's see if this is true or false. So the result that we expected was true, and if you look at that, it's true. So okay, all of these logical operators produce booleans, either true or false, basically. So either true or false will be the result as long as you use these. And you can use these to join conditions that you'd want to test or that you'd want to see, which comes back to testing, right? So if you have a bunch of conditions that you want to test, you'd have that condition and so on. Depending on the number of things that you want to check, there is no limit on the number of conditions that you can have, as long as it makes sense to whatever it is that you're checking. So now this and will return true only if both two or more conditions are true. So this is the true condition. When will these produce a true value? So for and, it's when two or more, or basically all of them. So let's put it like that. And will only put out a true if all conditions are true. Right? And or will put out a true value if at least one is true. At least one is true. And this one, the not basically reverses whatever you have. So if you say not true, this will produce false. So if you say not, then have x greater than 1 and x less than 10. So in here we have a true, because that is true. We saw that just here down there. So whatever result that you have in here, if you then apply not to it, the opposite comes out. So if you have not of a false condition, the result will be true. If you have not of a true condition, then the result will be false. So not basically inverts, or it reverses, or you can look at it in terms of mathematics and say it negates. So it applies the negative or the opposite of what you have. So then you expect a true from not when you have false in there, right? So these are the conditions that are going to give you a true as the output. So let's test each one of them just to be sure. So we've already seen and if we change this to say x less than 1, so 5 is not less than 1, which means this first condition, which is x less than 1, will fail. This will be a false, and this is true because x is less than 10. So false and true will give you a false because we're using and we expect all of them to be true so that the and can actually produce a true. So now if we run this, you'd see that we actually do get false. But as long as these two are true, that is when you get a true statement, right? So let's run that again, changing the condition, and it's now true. Coming to and both of these are true. So remember, this is or. Remember that when we deal with or, now only one has to be true. So even if you have 1,000 conditions, as long as one of them is true, the result will be true. So both of these are true in this case. If we change this, x less than 1, this one is false, but this one is still true. So we expect true again because only one of them has to be true. But if both of them are false, so x is not greater than 10 and it's not less than 1, then do expect a false. So at least one has to be true for us to get a true when dealing with or. And finally, let's talk about not. So not will basically cover everything that we're dealing with. And as we cover everything, remember that in the previous case, this was false. So if you say not false, we expect a true as the result, and that is what we have. So you can literally write false in here, or you can have a condition which is false, and that is the only time that you'd actually have this as true. If it's true and you apply the not to it, it will become false. So remember that x is greater than 1 and x is less than 10. So this condition inside is true, but now after it being evaluated to true, we're applying not to it. So not true is false. So that is what we expect, and let's run this to check, and if you look at that, it's false. So these are logical operators in Python, and this is how you'd use them. You can put them inside if statements. Any other conditions that you might want to check, you can directly, just like this, use print statements to find the result, the boolean value, and you can use that boolean value at a later stage. So that is all that I had to talk about in this video. If you like the video, just give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video.